Welcome to the podcast. My name is Danny Cola. If this is your first time listening, make sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you can join me in having some epic conversations that access higher levels of potential with creatives and professionals from all around the globe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's guest is Jessie Salas. Jessie is the program director for a method of fitness called foundation training. Foundation training is a simple solution that gives you the means to change the way you move and correct the imbalances caused by our modern habits. Through a series of bodyweight exercises, foundation training activates your posterior chain, anchors the hips, decompresses the spine, and teaches you to take the burden of supporting the body out of your joints and put it where it belongs, in your muscles. No matter your age or your fitness level, foundation training puts you on the path to wellness. I met Jessie in Maui at the MauiFit Convention in 2021. I actually met him in the XPT barrel sauna and overheard him talking about several holistic health practices and quantum physics ideas that resonated strongly within me. Jessie is also a retired firefighter, and after 17 years on the job, there's definitely a burning desire in him that wants to share some of the insight about how to train your nervous system, using some of these methods not only to help people on an individual level, but to advance the human species. Jessie can be found all over the world coaching elite athletes and teaching everyone about foundations training. You can follow Jessie on Instagram at Coach J Salas. So without further ado, here's the podcast, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. We made it. We did it. So I really appreciate your time and getting out here, man.
Stoked, bro. I'm excited, man. It's been, we met in Maui.
Right.
Very briefly. I got to meet everybody very briefly, but there's a lot of really interesting people. So I'm stoked that it's brought us back around to get to connect.
Yeah, you're somebody that's been on my radar for a long time to chat with more. Like I said, we met in that barrel sauna. I think we did a little bit of foundations training outside. That was my first time getting exposed to it. And then we did, I remember going into the ice bath almost right away. And then right after into that sauna. And that's where you were talking. And I was like, oh, say more. Whatever it is that we were talking about, it was just resonating pretty hardcore. But yeah, dude, I want to go back to talking about some of the fighters you're training, because I did see that you were working with some young guys. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that kind of sprouted.
So I just was with the Ruotolo brothers, which is a set of twin brothers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we did a 6-week training camp building up to what I didn't realize was the biggest tournament there is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the ADCC.
And that just happened like last week, right?
Yeah, last weekend in Vegas.
Cool.
And we wound up leaving with one being not only a world champion, but he was the youngest. He's the youngest in ADCC history to be a world champion. So he gave a dominating performance. He submitted everybody. Nothing was up to points. Everything was a submission.
Wow.
He looked extremely powerful. What I was looking to see from what we did, I felt like shined in his performance. His brother came in, had a mental hurdle because he had to fight a teammate. And then I found out later it wasn't just a teammate, it was somebody that's been trained jiu-jitsu with him since he was like a little kid. And so it was a mentor friend. And he just went in there in a very different headspace and wound up losing by points. And then he came back and fought in the absolute division, which for anyone that doesn't know is pretty much you can be 250 pounds or you can be 160 pounds. If you're coming from your team, they let 2 people from every division fight in the absolute. And so he had fought in the 88 kilo division, and he was fighting guys that had fought in, they're 250 pounds. He's a $180. So he ended up submitting 2 world-class athletes that were twice his size, and then lost by points. Arguably, some will say he got robbed. I felt like he got robbed, but nonetheless, he got a bronze medal, which is pretty amazing. And that just came about from their doctor. We had been connected a year ago, and they had been talking to their doctor in Newport about wanting to start building their strength game. They're amazing jiu-jitsu athletes, but no real background strength training. And their fear was compromising the way that their jiu-jitsu game is done. And so their doctor said, I got to connect you with Jessie. we started doing a little bit of foundation training and just one or two exercises, and it resonated with them very quickly, you know, using your body to strengthen your body. And so that started it, and we barely scratched the surface, but they went to Singapore. Each of them had fights, and they dominated their opponents there. I got a nice message just going, dude, this is amazing. We felt so strong. And I just said, well, guys, when we have time, I want to actually put you through some real work. And, you know, we surfed a little bit together in Costa Rica, game planned, building up to ADCC, and that spawned it. Prior to this, it was one or two sessions, one or two foundation training exercises, but they ran with it. And, you know, that work has a way of kind of helping you turn up the volume of muscle connection. It's generally for people for chronic pain, but they were just feeling this shift in their power output and really like a sense of just, man, I really get a lot of like a testosterone boost when I'm about to go into these fights.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they were
for
hooked.
sure. So let's break down this foundation training a little bit more, because the idea is to shift your, what do you say, weight from joints to your actual muscles, right?
Yeah, it's very accurate.
It's a shifting of weight and making sure that you're putting your body in a position that's kind of the opposite of what society is kind of telling you to do. Just, you know, we're shoulders in, sitting down a lot. And what foundation training is doing is allowing you to, like I said, move some of that momentum into your muscles again, as opposed to resting in your joints. Let's break that down a little bit, because, you know, I've been doing it just a little bit, nothing crazy. You know, I watch you do that hip hinge, the arms extended, and then there's other modalities to like turn, twist. You can go down in lunges. So there's extensions of just that hinge. And I think in Maui we did just that hinge. And I remember thinking like, what are we doing? You know, like, and we're doing it. We're in that position for, I want to say it was like a minute, 90 seconds. It was a long time. And, you know, the whole Maui experience in general for me was very eye-opening, and I took so much information, met so many cool people, and embodied it all. And I'm using it in my own training. My clients are loving some of these movements. I'm feeling great doing some of these exercises. So let's break down what is happening in that hinge specifically that's so powerful when it comes to shifting some of that weight and momentum from joints to muscles. Break that down a little bit more for me.
Yeah. So easiest way I can put it is we're shifting your body from secondary stability, the stuff without elasticity, your joints, your bones, your ligaments, and we're putting you back into primary stability, muscles and tendons, the things with elasticity. If we break down the exercise you're talking about, the founder, which most people can find if they go to foundation training on YouTube, you'll do a workout, lots of the butt back, hands up. And what we're really doing is there's degrees of internal rotation and there's degrees of external rotation. So the legs, you'll see we have almost like a pigeon-toed position going on with the feet. And we're, exactly your point, we're working to balance the body back away from the breakdowns we see from modern society. So we have a degree of internal rotation that you see it at the toes, but it's happening at your hip joints. So we're allowing the glutes to actually lengthen out and the adductors to start to be retension. So your butt and the inside thighs are being challenged to go back to a balanced position where they start to retrain the legs to actually be in this neutral position where your toes are leading, not the inner thighs with the toes splayed out. So there's a corrective exercise point going on with the legs. With the arms, we're working on helping people go from internal rotation, which we see a lot with phones, this convergence in towards center sitting, and we're bringing in external rotation. And this is kind of a fundamental element that's in all the exercises. But then we bring in the hip hinge perspective and we start to load into the hip hinge. And from the outside looking in, they see a hip hinge, they see the hands out. Very simplistic. As we start to get into it, it becomes more about the idea that you learn to anchor, which is where we're tensioning the legs towards center. We're recruiting the muscles that connect your femurs to your pelvis. So for us, the core is anything that attaches to the pelvis, above it or below it. So if we just do a lot of ab work, even just low lumbar work, you're missing 50% of your core. So we're challenging this anchoring concept. There's an inner anchor, there's an outer anchor. You can't see it, but that's what we start to work on. As we pull the hips back and you load the hamstrings, we reach the hands out and up, you'll see us close them into what we call a sphere of tension. So that sphere of tension done correctly and trained, we usually encourage a trained set of eyes on you, is now we're closing your kinetic chain of the body, we're squeezing the fingertips, and we're working on tensioning through muscle chains so that you're getting the lats to start to dominate over the traps wanting to lead from here, so that you're coming from the more powerful central muscles. As we hinge the hips back, we anchor, we close that sphere, you're challenging the body to tension the limbs towards center, and we use the breath through what we call decompression breathing to push away from center. And so if you get real fundamental, if you look at it, you're almost like a McGill's idea of a bird dog. Super simplistic is we're teaching the body to be stable through our center mass, and we're moving at the hips and we're moving at the shoulders. When you look at a bird dog in quadruped, we extend the leg, we extend the fist. You have a stable lumbar thoracic spine with mobile hips and mobile shoulders. And you learn how to train that. For us, it's a tool for chronic pain, but it's also a tool for performance and rewiring the way that we go about moving through the day. The more you do it, the more people find that they naturally start to hinge through the day, as opposed to rounding at their low spine, which is kind of a side effect of so much sitting. When we sit often, our butts start to tuck under us, our legs turn out, our upper body drops in. And what we see is that people are no longer hinging, but they're rounding from the low spine, that lumbar spine, and they're just flexing there all day instead of flexing at the hip joint. So it's simplistic in nature, and you can just mimic it, and you're probably going to see some benefit. When you learn the layers of the work and you learn decompression breathing, it becomes a much bigger exercise.
Yeah, I can see that. And then just doing it regularly kind of rewires the way you get into a hinge, which is this natural movement that we do almost multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
100%.
Now, how does that, how would you intertwine it with like a strength training workout? Do you start with it? Can you do it in between sets? Do you end with it? What are your thoughts about that? And then break down like how you did that with your jiu-jitsu fighters and in their training for me.
Okay. So I go back to what's your bandwidth. Some people want to get it over with. They're in the mindset of, here's my warm up. Now I'm going to lift or I'm going to train. I think that's great. I think it's a great starting point. I personally will do a 5 to 10 minute foundation specific warm up with some other mobility threaded in. And then I'll get on to whatever my lifts are. If I'm doing, say some heavy deadlifts and some standing overhead press, people generally see me right before I go under there, go into one of the foundation exercises, very brief, but just to tension my body, and then go under load. Reason being, you can find where the research shows that if you pre-tense your body before you load your body, your output is stronger. I look as, again, if I can fire everything up for a split second, shake it off, and then go under load, those muscles are going to be more attuned to be involved in the game. I want as many muscles I can recruit behind my practice. And then usually I'll finish whatever my routines are with a Tabata of a couple foundation exercises. Again, to balance my body back to the central point, because when I swing my kettlebell, when I squat, when I deadlift, there's a lot of external rotation. And so I want to just make sure I'm balancing my body back to where my legs want to be in this neutral position, that I'm leading with, that second toe on my foot, and that, I'm just kind of calibrating the springs to be nice and spring loaded for my day. With the jiu-jitsu guys, it was a little bit more of, we were waking up and going, once we kind of figured out what are the areas of nagging stuff, because we all have that, especially fighters. Once we figured out what their nagging things were, we were starting a day where getting up, getting hydrated, and then getting into some fundamental ground foundation exercises, some dead hanging for the shoulders, some thoracic mobility work. We had about 20 minutes in the apartment. We'd walk down to the beach, and then it was a 5 to 10 minute swim, ocean swim. And then we'd come in and we'd do about 20 minutes of foundation training. And that was that. They have about an hour and a half, and then it was jiu-jitsu. We generally get to jiu-jitsu, do 5 to 10 minutes of foundation warming up, and they just get into their combat training, try to get another 3 to 5 minutes after. Again, I'm working now to really dose them as much as possible, because we have a very tight time frame.
Right.
But the more I can get them getting these balance back, because their bodies have adapted heavily to jiu-jitsu. They've been doing it since they were 3-4 years old. And so that idea that our bodies adapt to the sport that we're doing, like, that's what I say to everybody is having your sport is a great thing to enjoy life. It's a great way to stay active. It doesn't necessarily hit every element we want to be hitting for wellness, to be aging in a good way where we're covering our strength, we're covering our movement, we're covering our cardio. And so the body adapts to these positions that we're in most, good or bad. So I'm working heavily to undo some patterns, but also to recruit and stabilize. So a little bit before jiu-jitsu, a little bit after, if they're feeling torques or twists, they naturally would start to implement it on rest periods, just to lengthen back out, to feel good in between, because you're getting torqued and twisted. And then end of the day, we'd go back to the gym, and it was 5 to 10 minutes to warm up, 5 minutes to cool down. So you see, it goes from being this collective class to these small doses through the day. And for the generalist, I find that to be the most effective way, because what I look at is we're really working in the beginning to undo patterns of the body, patterns to collapse in, patterns to let the pelvis tuck, patterns to want to, rounded the shoulders. And it really comes out when people do foundation training at the early phases of, you see these patterns and we apply the method to make space for the joints, make space for the nerves, make space for their breathing. And once they start to do that, then it's like, okay, as the patterns start to shift, as the muscular endurance starts to come up, then I say start looking at longer and longer workouts. But break the idea of I need 1 hour to train today, but rather get snacks of movement through the day. And we've got plenty of 5-minute workouts on our app. Like I tell people, do 5-minute workouts throughout the day.
Totally. I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm a trainer, so I'm training every single day with people in that kind of hour setting. But for myself, it's these little pockets throughout the day. And I'm not really, I mean, sometimes I'll take a whole 45 or 60-minute workout to myself, but a lot of times it's just these little pockets where I'm doing a little bit of open chain mobility, swinging some clubs, some mace. And it's worked very nicely for me. I've been able to not only maintain like an aesthetic physique, but just, be level-headed and calm under pressurized situations as a business owner and what have you. Now, going back, I want to talk about this foundation training a little bit more. I've always been a proponent of no shoes. I've never really liked shoes. So, and that's not, I mean, it's not something that I fight with my clients about, but like, I'm just going to let them kind of do what they want to do. But when it comes to like really tuning into the body, I'm a huge proponent of going barefoot or flat shoes. Do you feel like the barefoot or flat shoes is definitely something that you're in on? And do you feel like that actually helps a little bit more when you're doing foundational work versus with shoes, or foundation training with shoes?
Foundation training with shoes is, to me, definitely you're missing some important parts. So I'm 100% with you on the shoe concept. For us, we really hammer on the connection of the foot's role in movement. And I've watched Dr. Goodman, who's the creator of foundation training, address people's chronic pains at their foot, at their calves, at their ankles. And so what people often do is go right to the source instead of recognizing the body as a system that we have to address collectively. So with the foot, being barefoot, being able to allow your foot to spread those toes out, it's fundamental. I encourage people to be barefoot and stand on a foam roller and, spend 5 minutes just rocking back and forth on the arches of their feet. Explore that. When I trained with some Ido Portal people for a summer, we were doing these foot walking drills where you'd start with the edge of your foot and then try to lay each toe down at a time where your foot's getting to spread out. And that was a 5-minute drill, like walk, this is it. And it was fun. They're very rigid, very like, do it. When the alarm goes off, you're done. So you're kind of getting this meditative movement practice and seeing how it was freeing up the foot, and the shoe really goes the other way. So like, I'm a big fan of the Vibram shoes, the Vivo Barefoots, whatever works for you to allow your foot to have that freedom. In foundation training, we teach what's called the 3 points of contact. And we really work on getting people to bring that awareness that in the exercises, that when they put their foot down, the pad at the base of the big toe, the pad at the base of their pinky toe, and their heel are their 3 points of contact. And we're working to root into those 3 points and then spread your toes out. And as you grip the toes in, can you still keep those 3 points of contact rooted, so that we're working on these chains of muscles that go through the foot. Specifically, we look at your posterior tibialis and your anterior tibialis. Simplistic, the back of your shin, the front of your shin. And by balancing those out, especially if people are wearing heels a lot, there's that one that's kind of stuck long, stuck short. But by doing this barefoot work, we start to see a lot of people get more connected in the way they move. My big wave surfers that have had back injuries and we've helped them rehab, when they really committed to doing the step-by-steps in that 3 points of contact and then learning how to maintain these connections while hinging, while squeezing the fingers, while lengthening the neck and breathing, and you layer all these fundamental things we have to mentally coordinate in the body, they have this oh shit effect of like, man, I cannot wait to be on my board in some big waves and feel this difference of connection that I just haven't had. You know, that only comes through practice, and that being barefoot and, you know, also is you're connecting with the earth. Like at this point, I know you're very aware of everything, but you know, I talked to somebody the other day about allowing for reducing inflammation. You know, we're an electric charge, and we ground into the earth. And there's enough research on it. I tell anybody to look up the books, look up the YouTube documentaries on it. But there's a huge there.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Let's just say it for everybody right now. Athletes, get your Adidas and Nike shoes off. It's annoying just because like there's so much more output that can be generated when we're training barefoot, when we're creating those neurological connections, those new pathways. There's a next level understanding to what it is that your goal is in your relative sport. And I'm a huge proponent of that. People, you know, they'll listen to it, it'll go through one ear out the other, whatever, no harm, no foul. But like, it's how much do you want to progress? How much do you want to get in more tune with your body? You know, have that strong foundation from the ground up. And I feel like the levels that you could exceed are limitless, essentially. Let's shift this a little bit here. I know that you were a firefighter for 17 years. I think that's what I heard.
Yes, sir.
When you made the decision to be, I'm done with the fireman job, and to transition into the work that you're doing now, talk to me about that transition. Talk to me about how that was mentally, emotionally. Talk to me about how you had to kind of like re-identify with this new character that you're becoming. And, you know, was it stressful? How did you handle it? Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, it was a very challenging decision. It was very stressful in different ways because I didn't see myself being a firefighter. I started that at 17. I was volunteering, riding on that truck, and I never didn't look forward to going to the job. I never had, you know, I had worked very hard to get into a special operations unit. And when I came to work, I was living the dream. I mean, I dreamed on riding on a truck that I got to go to every major fire in the city. I got to cut people out of cars. I got to, you know, be a rescue diver and go into crazy scenarios that was so much beyond just riding on the back of the truck, which I loved every day of that part of my career. But when I got into my 30s and I had already been doing strength and conditioning for the fire service, I did all the recruit training stuff, and I was living the wellness path in the fire service. And I got into foundation training, and it was for my own injuries. It escalated, and then I was presented with this decision of pursuing this new passion. And it started to hit me in this mindset of like, you know, you've accomplished every goal you set out for in the fire service. You wanted to be in the career, in the path that you're on. You're 100% living it. You've been living it for 5 years. And this new passion was pulling me where I felt like I was half in the fire service and half in the new path. And so it was really a matter of like listening to Les Brown when he talks about are you growing? Or are you rotting on the vine? And when I started to really think about that, I was going, you're only staying in the fire service now because it's comfortable and it's fun and you have your friends. And it was never for me like about the money. Like I had a great paycheck. I had great health insurance. I had hundreds of hours of vacation and sick leave. And that was the biggest thing that everyone was so concerned for me about leaving. And when I stepped back, I went, yeah, that's all great and it's security, but it's, you got to follow what you're passionate about now. And so I ended up going, okay, I'm going to go do this. I can always come back. And I kind of prepped in the year going into that, like, okay, if I was going to entertain this idea, it didn't happen overnight. I set myself up. I was in Australia when the idea was presented. I was like, no way. I've got 10 years left. I've got a pension. I've got all these things. I can't leave. I've got this rock star position. I'm somebody when I'm there. And, but I said to myself one day, well, there's no guarantees that things won't change in the fire service. What would you want to do, or what would you need to have in place if you wanted to leave, or if things started to change? And I was like, okay, I want to have no debt. I want to have a van that I can live out of while I figure out where I even want to live. I want to have these courses under my belt. And I just started checking. I kind of pulled out a poster board like I was in 5th grade, and I wrote all this stuff down. I backwards planned everything. And I just started chiseling away at it. And then, it started to be more and more of a reality. The more I focused on it, and the more I would talk to other people about it, and meeting, random guys on surf trips that had been war correspondents in Afghanistan during the war, and talking with them at this surf camp, and just kind of it's like, once you start to put yourself in that direction, these omens, these things come into your life that if you're paying attention, it just kind of reaffirms what you're looking at, or what you're feeling. And so, I ended up leaving. It was extremely stressful. The chief was like, the chief actually pulled me in, the whole fire department pulled me in and said, you're making a good decision. You can always come back. This will be here for you for the next 2 years, but don't be one of these guys that can't ever leave this place. I'm watching guys that should have retired already, but they're working up in the operations level of the fire service, 9 to 5. And he's like, they're walking around with heart rate monitors on and chest monitors, but they don't have something bigger than this to go do. So they cannot leave, and they can't fathom, what do I do next? So he was very encouraging. And, I left.
That's awesome.
I had a lot of days where it was like, what have I done? But I weathered the storm 2 years later, and it was like, I couldn't imagine going back. And just, honestly, every day waking up and having a breathing practice, a meditation practice, focusing on Tony Robbins' 3 things of gratitude, visualization of what I'm going to achieve, and things that make me happy. And if you put that into a Joe Dispenza concept, it was visualizing, attaching emotions to it, and drawing it into your reality to whatever you believe in, all that. But at the end of the day, it kept me sane.
That was the stuff that you were saying in the sauna that resonated with me. I didn't know that it was, that you had to jump from being a firefighter into this new endeavor. And I asked that because there's a lot of kids that follow my Instagram, and, high school, college kids that are growing up with this idea that they have to be one thing when they grow up. And what I'm finding as I get older is that, you jump into a career, and that's great. And you learn and you absorb so much of what that career or thing has to offer. But the jumping ship is never like jumping into people's minds, or it's like completely frowned upon, and I want people to know that it's okay to jump ship, and it's okay to, if you're not feeling it after a little while, to start thinking about other ways that you can make do. And I just think it's courageous. And, you don't have to stick to one thing. And I think, and all that stuff that you said resonated with me too, because I was a high school teacher for several years, and, I wanted to get out before the pandemic. It just wasn't something conducive to the way that I wanted to teach and live my life. And I had to watch everything I had to say, and I'm not about to live life that way. And that's what corporate America is. You got to be careful with what you say, or else you're not, you're going to get fired, or you're not going to get your pension. And I don't want to be one of those people that are working for the wrong reasons, and not to mention the system is all effed up, and that's just a whole nother conversation for another day. But yeah, you get into the breath work, you get into the wellness practices, and you get into these states to where you are bringing up these emotional states before they actually happen. And I feel like in this third dimension, it has no choice but to pull you into those ways that you're thinking and feeling. And I've very much experienced that in my life. It's amazing. Now, and the other question I want to ask you is, how much does emotional baggage and emotional stress wear down physically? How much does that have to do with the pain that we feel what are your some of your personal experiences with that? Do you feel like that plays a role in our physical pain if we're in a chronic fight or flight state?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fight or flight state is a body that's just forever in this heightened sense of just you're easily triggered. And the
Mm,
best example I can give is when I was a firefighter, not realizing it before I stumbled into to your point of for the young is find things that interest you that you're like that looks like it would be so cool to do and go do it.
yeah.
Just to go be a student, to be evolving, to be growing. But I allowed that curiosity to bring me into free diving. And when I was like, I'm gonna go do this free diving course, type A guy, and I went, I'm gonna train for this because I'm not gonna be a guy that's gonna show up and can't do the 3-minute breath hold. So immediately I'm in a competition with everybody that no one else realizes they're attending.
Mm,
But I was training for that course and I went, okay, no more coffee, and I'm gonna do breath work every day to prep. And then there was these crazy side effects I noticed, but what I started to kind of recognize was that I was no longer in this constant state of, short fuse that someone pulled out in front of me. I was like, oh,
mm,
pissy, looking, easily, I don't want to say triggered. I hate the word, but easily set off by the dumbest things. And as I started to look at it, and I looked at it from the lens of doing foundation training, doing these things where suddenly there's these breathing elements constantly, and looking at it and talking with other doc friends was that being at the firehouse all day long, and this is the best example I can give for that chronic inflammation fight or flight, is that when you're at a busy house, it's 20, 30 times a day, bam, the alarm's going off, bam,
yeah,
the
I can't
alarm's going off.
imagine.
And to that, you get to a point where you're usually like, okay, it's some kind of bullshit call. But bullshit's all relative, right? Like non-bullshit's, oh, hey, we got a rocking house fire. Oh, hey, we have an entrapment. Oh, we have something out of the ordinary that's going to require us to perform, as opposed to the day-to-day medicals. You become very accustomed. But when you're living in that 24/7, you start doing that for so many years. What I noticed is that you start to become stuck in this high sympathetic state all the time. You're always in this like ha ha ha, and it's like then when you're off duty, you're looking for ways to keep it going, and then you'll engage in dumb behavior. You'll go drink.
Mm,
You'll go get in fights. You'll go do dumb stuff. And as a young firefighter, you're always like, live fast, die young, and it's just part of the job and the lifestyle. And
mm,
looking back, I'm going, man, it's. I see it when I look at no sleep, dealing with high stress moments again and again and again, police, fire, military, you're living in that without ever realizing it. And then the
yeah.
hard part is then people want to say, well, just meditate, we'll just do this. And what I go back to, especially when I was in that world, is like, that's very easy from the outside when you're not in this world. And so it becomes a challenge. And even now when I go do what I do is like, I'm not a firefighter anymore. So I have to be calculated with the way I deliver into police, fire, and military, because it's a very different audience. And, I try to recognize first I need to meet them at a very high level of intensity. I'm going to bring them up a little bit higher, and then I'm going to slowly pull the plug on them to help bring them down and out of that, to where then to ask them to sit there and breathe for 5 minutes and just focus on their breathing is 100 times more receptive. But most of us go at it from like, oh, meditate, close your eyes, sit there for
Yeah.
5 minutes. Doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. Well, you're a good coach. You're meeting the people where they're at. And
No, I
that's a
appreciate it.
huge thing. You have to meet people where they're at in order to take them where we think as coaches that they should be going. Yeah, I think we're subconsciously addicted to some of those emotions, and it does take higher levels of awareness to realize that and break those patterns, which is why we're doing breath work, which is why we're getting into a sauna, which is why we're doing the ice bath and, mobility, yoga, whatever it is, to balance from that sympathetic state to a more parasympathetic state. What are your thoughts about like the flow zone?
Mm.
Is that important to get into that? And how often do you try to get into that flow state when you're writing or when you're surfing or when you're coaching and training, just kind of like be that observer? you know? And does that relate to quantum physics? Does that relate to esoteric natures of consciousness? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. Sometimes I try to induce it. You know, like if you read any of Stephen Kotler's work, it's really, really helpful. You know, the his books on becoming Superman,
Stephen
the
Kotler, you said?
Stealing Fire, Stephen Kotler, yeah,
Okay, I'll write that down.
the Art of Impossible, amazing. So it's all kind of talking about getting to flow state, what flow state does. And I think when I look back, like firefighting, when coming off the truck on a real rocking house fire or real moments where people were reliant on you, there was a there was that period of getting into a flow state is the best way I can describe what was happening, because you came off and you performed, and the things you trained would just happen, and not just happen, but it would come out without thought. And what I look at is like that was the closest. And when I stepped back and went, well, there was always an element of danger, there was an element of risk, and I felt like that aided into that flow state. So now, as I listen to Huberman Lab podcasts and listen to these different guys kind of talking about inducing dopamine, inducing these different parts of the body to help you learn better, reading Stephen Kotler's stuff of using these kind of things to set the stage to get into a flow state. For reading and writing, like I'll work on some juggling, some hand balancing, some different things to just challenge my brain, then sit down and focus on journaling and reading and looking for that flow state. I would say, like, for me, it's just simply being lost in what I'm doing. And that for me is that flow state. With surfing, being able to get in that state where things are just connecting, you know, looking at it, I'd say that's a flow state. Is it always there? No, but I feel like it does set a stage for just walking away from something feeling extremely satisfied, you
Yeah.
know, and finding the things that, not necessarily pursuing a flow state, but finding things that get you into something where you're just so into it,
Yeah.
and you don't think about the time, and then when it's over you feel very satisfied from it. That to me is like, oh wow, okay, if I look back as we're talking about, like, that to me is feeling a flow state. Teaching a good foundation class, teaching
Yeah.
somebody where it's a back and forth, and
Yeah.
they're dealing with an injury, and we're okay, we're getting, hey, we're not triggering it, hey, you're moving good, you're feeling good, and we're just in this back and forth. When I'm done, it, wow, that was amazing. They feel awesome. I'm so rewarded from that. That to me becomes the oh shit of a flow. And then yeah, as far as getting into quantum physics and all that stuff, I'm still so trying to understand that. And I
Yeah.
listen to Joe Dispenza and it makes sense to me, but I wouldn't really know how to communicate it in that
Yeah.
sense.
Well, what you said was interesting. You said there's an inherent risk when you're trying to get into some flow state, which I think is important. There's a risk. There's like maybe an inherent goal that we're trying to get. There's skill set. There's a challenge, and yeah, I think that's really important. And risk is stress. So we talk about
Mm,
stress in this negative way, and it can be destructive if we're under it all the time. But self-awareness and building those levels and that capacity to realize, oh, I think I might be overstepping my boundary, let's pull it back. Like Firas Sahabi talks about flow training, where it's
mm,
like, if you can do 20 reps of something, don't go all the way, do 10 and leave some in the tank. Like, that philosophy rings so true to me, even in my day to day. Like, if I could bust out 9 sessions in a row, because I can, fuck that. Do 6 or 5 and leave some in the tank and keep on going and build it steadily, as opposed to doing 9 every single day for 6 days a week,
mm.
7 days a week. And then we find ourselves burnt out. I think that same kind of philosophy can be brought down to training. And, you know, it's not about going super hard every day, all the time. At least I don't feel that that's
No,
appropriate, you know, and especially
no.
when we're in this society and this kind of culture that's really high intensity and high strung and extremely demanding, especially on young people, and, you know, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s trying to get to that retirement stage. I mean, there's a lot of us that are kind of almost programmed in that way still. You know, when I started talking about leaving my teaching job and opening up a gym, you know, I got good support, and I got people that were like, nah, dude, you got to go back to teaching. The Joe Dispenza work, I read Becoming Supernatural in like 2019. And It was amazing. It changed the way I looked at reality. It changed the way. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're still
You
there.
got
It
me?
changed. Yeah, I got you. It changed the
Okay.
way I started looking at reality, and I was like, if this is true, then we're we're onto something here, because when it comes to like setting a goal and achieving a goal, it's not just something that you have to grind out, and force its way to fruition. I feel like the meditations, and just learning about some of, the little bit that I know about epigenetics, and the truth to changing some of the gene expressions, if you will, some of
Mm.
the calling of the proteins, and the fact that, the junk DNA information like blew my mind. The fact that all of the universes in the cosmic DNA sits in you already. It's just about uncovering it, which I think is mind blowing. Talk to me about how some of that information just kind of made you go aha, because I think in life we get I mean, I live for these cathartic moments, these amazing
Yeah.
aha moments where I'm just like, okay, wow, very interesting. I never saw the world that way. And just kind of regularly doing meditations and shifting my subconscious thought or conscious thoughts that somehow embody my subconscious, to building a life that I want to live and enjoy, and show my son that, like, this is what's capable, this is what's possible in this dimension. So talk to me about some of your aha moments, how some of the meditations have changed the way you think about setting your goals and achieving your goals.
Yeah, I think so. First off, I always look at it from Joe Dispenza helps take what most people find to be like foo hippie stuff, and he
Mm-hmm.
gives you a lot of really good research, a lot of really good testing. And so, for anybody that's like, this sounds like foo stuff, just his part where he talks about the meditating 3 times a day for 10 minutes on happiness, and it positively influenced people's immunoglobulin response. So you can influence your immune system to be stronger through meditating on being on things that make you happy. That to me alone, like when I hear that, just like when I the first time I heard Wim Hof, I'm like, that's amazing. I'm in. Let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
What do I have to lose if I pursue this and unlock some potential that we don't even know what our bodies are capable of at this point?
Mm.
I believe we're so far from nature and so detached from nature that we've lost so many innate skills. And the more we're seeing generations that are born onto a cell phone, pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
that I question, what are they losing? Their peripheral vision, their awareness to threat.
Mm.
I saw a young kid in a Starbucks the other day. I went to walk in line, sitting staring at their phone. They never look up. They hear the name, they walk over to get their coffee or their sandwich. They never look up. They look up for a split second, pick it up, look back at the phone, and just start walking out. The girl says, "Have a great day," never acknowledges or even hears it.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what is that doing to this human? I mean, the research is coming out already, but not to go on a tangent off of Joe Dispenza, um, that work and recognizing how when we're in nature, what that immediately does, what the research shows it does for our subconscious, for our mental state, for our body, and kind of getting away from the idea that I think people forget the fact that we are of the earth, not just put onto the earth. And when you
Mm.
start to recognize that, and you realize, like, hey, we produce carbon dioxide, the trees absorb it, they produce oxygen. We're so much more connected than we really want to believe.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, and I think about what Joe Dispenza talks about, of when you start to really harness your focus, harness your thoughts. For me, I started telling people, like, once you recognize you have this control, you have this power, it's almost like I make the joke, the video game controller for your character is in your hands. And
Yeah.
you start to realize you have total control of it. It's just a matter of you have to recognize that, like anything else, it takes time, it takes work. And for me, I just started seeing, as a byproduct, I could look back from 6 months and be like, man, I'm achieving these things that I was going, I will do these things. I will accomplish this in my morning meditations. And so when I started going, oh, I accomplished this. Oh, I accomplished this. When leaving the fire service and just putting it out there that I was going to start doing these things and watching doors open up, watching things start to happen, it has almost seemed like, you know, a joke. Like you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
Right.
And so I just find that one, it brings peace of mind. Two, it shifts the way you think. If you're starting the day and you're putting time aside to just think about the things that you have going in your life that are good, it's going to change the way you go about the day. But you focus on that gratitude, then you focus on what it is you want to achieve. You set a plan for your day, for your week, for your month, your year, your life, and then you're focusing on the things that make you happy. You start, as Dispenza talks about, you start attaching these emotions to these ideas and thoughts, and your subconscious, for anybody that's not totally familiar, your subconscious has no choice but to start to believe you already have them. And in the quantum realms, I guess, that we start to put that out there, and you create this, you shift and create this reality for yourself.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's just a superpower, and
Yeah.
it's a great meditation. At nothing else, it's a beautiful way to go about your day and your life, as opposed to waking up, responding to the text, the emails, or like the firehouse, putting it was a culture to wake up and the news on and watch it and going, we just spent our whole night responding to some pretty horrific things, dealing with some tough stuff. Now I'm going to sit here and watch an even more report of how the world's falling apart. And I used to wake up before everybody, make the coffee, put the dish away, and I'd put on pop-up music videos. And over time, it went from where's the fucking news to, oh, I remember this band, laughing, joking, talking, which kind of would happen anyways, but there was such an energy shift. And then
Yeah.
we'd all be laughing when the other shift would come in, because you're like, why isn't the news on? There's always battles between two shifts. And I realized that we were shifting the subconscious program by starting the day with more fun. And it just meant more talking story in the tribe instead of staring at the news and talking about more of the problems.
Dude,
So
I fucking
yeah,
love that.
I'm a big, yeah, bro. It's like it gets, you want it for people, and it starts to become, you feel it, you've experienced it, I felt it, I've experienced it, and I believe when people start to be open to it, it just changes inevitable. But it's hard, and
It
I
is.
found combining Wim Hof and this stuff was more actionable for people. It was for me, because that is such a in I mean, Wim Hof is so intense, but again, like you're inducing a sympathetic state in your body. Like that is a very challenge. More research is coming out now of like, hey, maybe doing that all the time isn't the best for our bodies. But nonetheless, I love a round or two of Wim Hof and focusing on these areas of life, because it's intense. It requires me to get all in. I have this adrenaline. I wake up, and then boom, you exhale, you hold, and your body's buzzing. Your mind is just for a moment in this just total relaxed state. And then going through that list of everything I have to be, the roof over my head, the bed I'm laying in, the blood in my veins, the air in my lungs, the amount of support I have in my life on my journey. And I'm just rattling. And sometimes I'm on a loop of the same things until something new comes into my subconscious. And I'm just, thankful for, the abundance. That's always my thing. Is I
Mm.
don't want money. I don't want these objective things. I want abundance of love and of life and of happiness
Yeah.
and the ability to continue to do what I do. And when I find planting that seed, it just bleeds into the whole day, and it starts to bleed into your lifestyle,
Oh yeah.
but that combo I found was amazing. Like you say, it almost gave a flow state by the little bit of stressor, right? And
Yeah,
then boom,
I
we're in
think
it.
yeah.
And then
I think that's really important.
please.
I definitely think there needs to be a little bit of that sympathetic state in order to induce some sort of flow state, because I mean, you're in the moment, and like you can't
Mm,
be in the moment if there's not something that you're trying to accomplish, right? And I think at the end of the day, like I have these podcasts and I train these people, and I'm so into these modalities because like I I want good for people inherently. It's like in my soul, it's in my heart. And like, I've been fortunate to be born into this amazing situation with two great parents who love the shit out of me. I have a wife and a child and this family that I just love. And my wife and I've been together for such a long time. And that's something that's not so it's not a ton of that in nature. you know, like 14 years of consistent reciprocating love. Like, I'm a lucky motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? So like inherently, I just feel those vibes all the time, and I just want good for people. And because I want good for people, I've learned so much about the nervous system, movement practices, and I've met so many people that taught me so many other things that I just want to be like, hey, this is cutting edge shit that, like, if you really, really want to change and be better and heal from your pain, whether it's psychological or physical, you have the
Mm.
tools. And like, I just want to scream it from the freaking mountaintops. Like, we have the ability to do that. It's just a matter of like reprogramming some of the bullshit patterns that we've been accustomed to doing, and we've never woken up and asked why we're doing the same thing over and over again. Like, we never wake up and ask, why isn't the news on? Like, or have that conversation, like, why do I keep putting the news on if it's not doing me any good? I'm convinced that it's
Yeah.
giving me the world news and like it's telling me everything that I need to know. Or is it giving you all sorts of like these fear responses because that's what it's supposed to do, And when you're in a fearful mode, you're
Mm.
way more easily controlled, and you're way more easily sold. And like, that's just a aha thing. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial or anything, but like, people are way more
Well, at this
controllable.
point, yeah.
It's just,
Yes.
they're
At
just
this
way more
point,
controllable when they're fearful, and that's just the bottom line.
yeah. I don't know the last time I watched the news. And just for everyone, it's not that I don't stay informed. I do stay
Right.
informed. I was at the gym. I'm on this kick right now of zone 2 conditioning, and I'm like monotonously getting on a treadmill so I can track my distance, my speeds, all these things. And I'm at the gym the other day, and my phone is generally some kind of motivational videos going on, these motivational montages, or I'm listening to someone discussing something. But I like to feel inspired at the start of my day. And
Yeah.
I was looking up and I'm watching the news and I'm seeing the writing, and I just was in my mind, I could see the sensationalizing of what was going on and the fearing coming out. I like, I don't want to look at that anymore. And I just was looking anywhere but that, because
Yeah.
I went, wow, it's amazing how it's so, like, when you've been away from it long enough, you see the design, if you will. And it's unfortunate because even if it's not a design to instill fear, it's a design to draw in ratings. People are
Yes.
drawn to that drama, that negative, and so the minimum, they want ratings, they want more viewers. Don't
And
be
that really
manipulated.
yeah, well, that really annoys me too with like social media and how that's become like the mantra of getting more views and likes, which frustrates the shit out of me too. It's like there's so much content out there that's stop doing this exercise and start doing this. Like, it's not so black and white, and there's so much of that out there that it makes me go like, this is the shit that's getting all sorts of love. Like, we're directing our attention in, I don't want to say the wrong places, but it has to be so extravagant one way or the other in order to get all this attention. And I'm not trying to gain so much attention or all this attention, but at the same time, like, you want to put out good quality information that resonates with people, that helps them heal, like I said. And unfortunately, that's not the shit that gets so much love. I mean, some of it does, but not nearly enough of it. What are your thoughts about that?
I think we're at a time where people are looking for attention and likes rather than being authentic, honest, and the best coaches I know, they look at everything going on and they're just going, "Give me like, really?" They look at all this stuff, and I'll say this: I just came off of being part of creating a world champion and a dominant world champion. And we didn't do any of this flashy, sexy, get like crap that I see. And at this point, I'm going to call it crap. Like, there's some stuff out there. I go, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's interesting. Like, I'll check it out. I'll play with it. But at the end of the day, it's simplistic. What I do is focused on
Yeah.
a systemic hit of the body and making sure we have good range of motion, good movement, good mobility, and that we're enhancing their sport. And I'm watching what they do. Are we getting improvements? No, no, no. Do we need to add something to take care of these nagging things? No, great. Show up, chop wood, carry water. Show up, chop
Mm,
wood, carry water. Consistent, to your point from earlier, is I'm not trying to kill them in the gym. There were some workouts that were designed to be extremely stressing when we were 2 weeks out of their fights, but
right.
those were calculated, low impact, on an Airdyne bike or with the kettlebell, but everything was methodical. I was not having them do all this crazy. Like one of the trainers I love, we joke about is like a lot of the kettlebell stuff, which is fun. And if that's your jam, it's cool. And it's not the kettlebell juggling. That's its own world. That's its own sport. But some of the new stuff for likes and clicks and tags, it's gotten crazy. And I encourage people to be good at fundamental stuff. At the end of the day, that's where you see the biggest change. It's consistency. It's not one workout. It's showing up, and it's being willing to stay focused on a path for 6 to 8 weeks down the road, 6 to 8 months down the road, and keep like that idea of you're filling your cup every time you train. You're not just dumping it out. You know, I like Strong First has gotten a lot of stuff now where it's like you're minimizing the amount of acid baths that you give your body, you know, and that was my whole thing with the brothers was I was very calculated on the acid baths because we're doing jujitsu, we're doing foundation, we're doing conditioning, we're doing strength, and I got to not dump them over the edge where they start falling apart with injuries. So we're at a time where it's flashy, it's sexy, and I think most people will show something that they probably only did for that video and they don't ever actually do it.
Yeah,
you know, and I just go, 3 to 4 exercises, get the bang for your buck, go outdoors, go hike, go run, go swim, go climb, go crawl, go paddleboard, go explore, but do stuff that gets you sunlight, gets your feet barefoot on the earth, maybe challenges you in the environment that we're supposed to be operating in. Like, what's it all for? I started going now, I'm about to be 40. I'm looking at going, what do I want to be able to do when I'm 100? I seen a guy recently, I want to be able to still jog 5 miles comfortably. I want to be able to do pull-ups. I want to be able to do push-ups. I want to still move and locomote well. I want to have a strength base that's going to keep me meeting the demands of the world, keep my bones dense, keep my ligaments dense, keep my fascia being able to absorb and deliver force. Okay, what does that look like? I'm kind of organizing to do a lot of testing over the next 3 to 4 months so that when I turn 40, I've got kind of like this baseline that at 50, 60, 70, 80, I can be checking in. Because as strength coach, we know power goes first, then strength. So can I keep gauges and know is what I'm doing right or wrong? And then I can hopefully be looking back and giving everybody else, like, don't do these mistakes I made. Steve Maxwell, if you haven't gotten him on here yet, you should. He's an amazing strength coach. He's been on Rogan. Yeah. He's one of those guys that has been going with the test of time. He was on London Real a few years ago.
I used to be a big fan of London
really
Real.
Big.
Okay,
so
very good.
Ido Portal had a huge moment. And he brought up some good points with him that I think is like when he's 60, the things he's talking about will be very, very, very different. So I recommend the interview, watch it. But if you can get him on the show and just talking about that aging athlete, I'm going to try to pay for a private with him just to pick his brain on what have you found, what have you gotten rid of, what do you believe as he's 25 years ahead of me, 60 years or 30 years ahead of me. What do you recommend? I look at the guys ahead of me and that are doing it right, and I go, what can I take away from that?
Absolutely.
Not what's flashy on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. What longevity, so that we could understand more of this reality and share it with the next generations to come. I think that's fucking huge. It's part of the reason why I do these conversations. Like, there's something burning in me. I started my podcast in 2017, and I did 150 episodes in like 3 years. And then when I started my gym, priorities shifted heavily, and I'm not like a tech savvy guy. I'm a conversationalist. I'm a networker. I like that. I just got really frustrated with the editing of the podcast and all that jazz. But now I've taken care of it. I got somebody that's actually doing that. It's like ask for help when you need the help, and, delegate when you have to delegate to get the things that you got to get done. And now I'm in this newfound space where, like I've been wanting to podcast with you for a long time now, ever since I met you. It's like, all right, well, schedule it. I got David Weck coming on in a couple weeks. There's several other people on my radar that I'm just like, make it work. And I have dream guests too. Like one day I would love to interview Joe Rogan, Aubrey Marcus, Kyle Kingsbury. I did one with Paul Chek a couple years back, which was, mind blowing. So like I have these goals, and, with all the things that we talk about on how to like attain those goals with these protocols, I'm just, obsessed with it. I built this gym. I'm building it even bigger and stronger with, high quality people, as far as coaches. And like, I want to I want to keep doing that. I feel the need that the world needs stuff like this now more than ever. And like, I'm putting in hundreds of hours of work when I was a teacher and not getting compensated for it, not feeling as satisfied. Why not do the damn thing on my own damn terms? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, man, I commend you and for the work that you're doing. One question I wanted to ask while you were talking about all that anti-aging longevity stuff is, how often do you get your blood work done? And do you think that's something that you should be doing regularly?
Yeah, I think it is something to do regularly. From the fire service, I always did it yearly. And then I started going from, what the fire department provided, which I came to find was like a surface stroke. It's almost what they gave you, to me, is almost like the equivalent of a high school physical, of like assessing your physical health. I think, the easiest one at this point when I look at of just sending people out there is what David Sinclair is doing with their group, because you can get a fundamental gauge. There's a lot of stuff that I'm learning is missing. There was a guy on Human Lab, Kyle something, where he kind of dove into that lab work. But I think it's important because, physical health is more than just what you look like on the outside. It's more than, it's how you think, how you feel, and then internally what's going on. And, I've got a guy that I work with that does all my nutrition focus, because, I hit a point where I was playing with keto. I read all these different books, and then I just couldn't figure out what was helping support me where I didn't feel like I'd burn out. Because North Shore, when the surf's good, it's on. And it's like a lot of really good surfing, a lot of strength training, conditioning. And my jiu-jitsu, I started to find that I'd be breaking down because I just wasn't feeling right. And so I looked great, but the breakdowns were coming. So I've got a guy now that when I do my blood work, I bring it to him. We go over it, and then he guides me on like, hey, eat more of this, that, supplement here, think about this, think about that. And it was kind of stuff that I didn't pay attention to, like, oh, hey, my free testosterone's great. And he goes, yeah, but it really comes down to what your sex binding globulin, because you can have high free testosterone, but if your sex binding globulin isn't right, then you're not binding and absorbing all that. So then he had a whole thing that I never thought about. So finding somebody you can trust that you can work with, I think is really, really important. The blood work that David Sinclair, I forget what their organization's called, but I know they cover a lot of bases, and then you can go over it where they guide you on what supplements you should be doing to adjust that, your biological age, if you will. So I'd say once a year. My goal, honestly, going into 40 is going to be to get it probably, twice a year for a little while, to go, okay, am I hitting all the marks right? Like I found out, hey, your iron is just a little bit high. Cool. Do a blood draw twice a year. That will manage any of that kind of stuff. So little hacks like that I'm hearing now. I'm going, oh, that's easy. Actionables. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, very good. Well, Jesse, this was a fantastic conversation. A lot of good things covered. I hope that we can do this again one day. I feel like the work that you're doing is awesome. And, I was doing some research on you just a couple of days ago, just, listening to some podcasts that you were on. I listened to that Cal Kingsbury one from 2018. And, Dr. Eric Goodman is the guy that kind of invented foundation training or started the company. And I just think that, thank God for people like you in this world that are out there doing the damn thing and, teaching some of these philosophies and, showing people that there are avenues to self-healing, and we don't have to look to pharmaceuticals all the time. We don't have to look to go to the doctor all the time, or surgeries or what have you. We have what it takes to heal from within. And giving people actionable steps to kind of start that journey is fantastic, and I think you guys are doing that. So I really appreciate your time today and getting over here and making it work, because it was a really valuable conversation, and it gets me excited and inspired to keep going and just finding new people to chat with and learn as much from. So I really appreciate it, man.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man. It was a great time.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. And when this is out, I'll make sure you get all the content. We'll start making clips. I got a video guy and a recording guy who's really high level, and we'll make some really good content when it's out there. If you can just share it, post it on your page, and do all the tagging and stuff like that, that'd be fantastic.
For sure.
Thank you.
Sounds good, bro.
Jesse. Have a good day, man. Enjoy the rest of it. Okay.
You too, bro.